I'm Chairman Scott Powell, and I would like to welcome you to the March 16th Audit Committee meeting. The Audit Committee was established with responsibilities to review the internal audit reports, review the results of the financial statement audit, review a report to the city council about committee activities, issues, and related recommendations as needed, and provide an open avenue of communications between internal audit and external auditors and city council. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through the committee meetings a bit differently. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen via phone. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I think the next thing is roll call. We do have a new member. Would you like to introduce yourself, Debbie?
Yes, Debbie Evanchek, and I think I'm a new member effective yesterday, so glad to be here.
Congratulations, and we appreciate you being here as well.
Thank you.
I will introduce all the other committee members who are participating virtually. Andrew Emery, excuse me.
Hello.
Sage Turner.
Good afternoon.
Please make sure you mute your microphone if you are speaking when you have a question or would like to speak. Unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone after you have done speaking. And I guess we can start our agenda items. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. Additionally, I would ask committee members to raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. Our first item is the approval of the November minutes. Any questions or changes to the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Seconded.
Committee members, when I say your name, please say aye or nay. Debbie?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Sage?
Aye.
And aye for us. The ayes have it. Our next item is the update on selection of our new external audit firm. I'll turn it over to Finance Director Tony McDowell.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chairman Powell. Just quickly, with Debbie being new, I did want to introduce the staff that we have on the call today, and I think there's three of us here. I'm Tony McDowell. I'm the Finance Director. Also with us today is Becky Ogles, our Assistant Finance Director, as well as Deborah Campbell, our City Manager. And I'm sure at some point, both of them will probably weigh in on one of the items or both of the items that we're talking about today. But the first item, as you mentioned, is the resolution that we're going to be taking to City Council at their next meeting on March 28th, seeking their approval to a contract with it's going to be our new external audit firm, and it's going to be Cherry Beckert. And I'll just kind of give you all a quick overview of the staff report. North Carolina general statutes require that all local governments have their accounts audited each year by an external firm and submit a copy of that audit report and the financial statements to the Local Government Commission or LGC. And the deadline for getting that done every year is October 31st. Per the city policies, we have a policy in place to rotate our audit firm every 5 years. And so what it specifically says in the policy is that unless there is a lack of competition among audit firms, fully qualified audit firms, I should say, then we are required to make that rotation to a new firm. And that's the point we're at now. We just reached the end of a 5-year engagement with PB Mayors. They've been our external auditor, like I said, for the last 5 years. So in January of this year, we put out an RFP, a request for proposals, seeking a new external audit firm. We got 5 responses to that RFP. One of them was from PB Mayors. They did respond in case there were no other qualified firms that responded. But we did get 3 other qualified firms in addition to PB Mayors. One of the RFPs that was submitted was deemed non-responsive. So we ended up with 3 firms other than PB Mayors that we looked at. The proposals from those companies were scored by a group of folks, a committee that included city staff members as well as Chairman Powell from this committee. I will say that Chairman Powell did recuse himself from consideration of Cherry Becker because he, I don't know if you all, Scott, I don't know if you all use them currently for you do. So he felt like it was best if he did not score their proposal, but all the other staff members did. And when we did, Cherry Becker was the firm that scored the highest. And so we are going to recommend to City Council at their next meeting that we enter into contract with Cherry Becker for the audit this year. And assuming that work is completed satisfactorily, we will continue on with them for the next 4 years after this. And the staff report includes some cost items as well. So you all can see what the anticipated cost of the audit is going to be. So with that, and I'll also mention we did present this item to the Policy, Finance, and Human Resources Committee on Tuesday, and they voted unanimously to recommend to City Council. And so we just wanted to bring this to you all today. I don't think, and this, I'm going to show my newness to this committee, even though it feels like I've been working with you all for a while now. I'm not sure in the past if you all have made a motion. I think it's more just an information only for you all at this point. I don't think we need any action from the committee, but did just want to share this information and happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Tony, if for some reason Cherry Becker doesn't perform their audit adequately, the city does have the right to go out for RFPs if for some unforeseen reason they're not working well or meshing well with staff.
Yes, absolutely. So, Debbie, I see you have a question.
Yeah, just to kind of level set, being new, how does this fee this year compare to the fee last year?
It is more, and I think we kind of anticipated it being more since we have been using the same firm for a while. Becky, I don't know if you recall off the top of your head exactly how much more it is than what we've been paying.
So the fee, the 149, I think last year it was 128. So it is about $20,000 more. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Audit firms are getting away from drafting financial statements. And that is something that we have asked them to do at least in year 1 for us. I definitely do a review, but we've always kind of drafted them together. So our hope is that they will draft one more year for us and then we can kind of take that on. So I think that's a big part of the increases that they are kind of getting away from that, and it's not included in the normal fee anymore. So there's an additional fee for that. But yeah, I think it's about $20,000 more than last year.
And I noticed that they're based out of Raleigh. Is there a local office or does that fee incorporate travel and lodging and all that stuff?
So they do have an office in Charlotte, and I believe the team that we will be working with will be out of Charlotte. But the not to exceed 149 does include all of their travel expenses as well. So yes, it should include everything. And we anticipate doing a little bit of a hybrid field work. We're going to kind of work with them this year. We do some of it remote, but they do normally come on site for a couple of days in June and then normally about a week in September. So yes.
And just one more question.
You're good.
Are there grants with federal requirements, and does this work incorporate any requirements associated with those, with that testing?
Yes, it does. So this includes the single audit.
Okay.
And I would have to go back and look at the contract. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do believe it includes auditing up to 4 or 5 federal programs, and I believe 2 or 3 state programs. We did last year have to review a whole bunch more than that because anything that had COVID dollars had to be reviewed. But I have already been in conversations with our partners at Cherry Beckert, and they think that we'll be good with the 4 or 5 this year. We don't anticipate having to do any more than that. So yes, this should be an all-inclusive. It should not go over that for the audit, the single audit, and everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Debbie, another reason I can weigh in on this because I work for a municipal unit as well. Here in the last 2 to 3 years, I don't want to say it's directly linked with COVID. You have seen a lot of auditing firms leave the space of governmental and municipal audits, and therefore, because there's only a few firms that are doing, I mean, it's more than a few, but there's a few firms doing the audits. The costs are going up for all municipal units as pertaining to that.
Thanks, Scott.
And I'll just add too, before we move on from this item, that we were very pleased that Cherry Beckert was one of the companies that responded to our RFP, and very pleased that we're going to be going under contract with them because they are one of the, I guess, called major firms in North Carolina. They do work with a lot of local governments currently, organizations our size and larger. And they're amongst a shrinking pool of folks who do that. Like Scott said, there's fewer and fewer firms that want to work on government work, especially local government work. And so we were very pleased that we got Cherry Beckert to respond and are happy to start working with them.
Okay, the next item is an update on our organizational risk assessment, and I will turn it back over to Tony.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks y'all. And I know Alicia is bringing up some slides for you all to view as well. And I'll just add that we do have, I think Christine is on from Cherry Beckert. Not sure if Denise, but we have at least one representative from Cherry Beckert here with us as well. And right off the bat, you're going to go, wait, we just heard the name Cherry Beckert. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this presentation. But the next item, like you mentioned, Scott, is an update on the risk assessment. And so kind of to give you all a little background, especially for Debbie, who's new, we contracted with Cherry Beckert to do what's called a risk assessment. I think we went under contract with them in late August of last year. And the reason we went, and again, we did an RFP, much like we did with the external audit as well. And the reason we decided to do a risk assessment was we really wanted to kind of jumpstart our internal audit program. The person who had been in the internal audit role left the organization, and even prior to her leaving the organization, a lot of her time in her last year or so with us was spent working on the American Rescue Plan and COVID funding and things like that. And so we had not really had what I would call a very active internal audit program even before she departed. And so as we were kind of regrouping and looking at the program after she left, we decided really the first step we should do is have this risk assessment done, which would give us an idea of some of the areas in the organization that we need to look at, some of the areas I would call the riskier areas of our operation, so that we can begin to formulate an internal audit work plan for the next 2 or 3 years. And so, like I said, we did an RFP. I can't remember exactly now how many firms we had that responded to that. But the winning bid for that was also Cherry Beckert. And like I said, Christine from Cherry Beckert is here today with us, and she led the project so far and has done most of the work on the project. Christine did ask that to kind of step back today as we're doing the presentation to you all because of the first item that you all heard. We're going to be going under contract at the end of this month with Cherry Beckert to become our external auditors. And so at this point, they really want to hand off this risk assessment and the work that's been done on that to us so it can become ours to own and ours to take forward and work with. And so hence you have me doing the presentation today with you all. And I think we'll have a statement here on the next slide or two that will kind of lay out, the conflict of interest items, just to make sure that everything is on the table and everyone understands that, again, that Cherry Bekaert has provided this work for us, and now they're going to be stepping back and letting us implement the roadmap from here. So with that, I'll kind of launch into the presentation. Just kind of quick agenda for the overview today. We're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the project and the scope. We have an executive summary, what I would call key takeaways from the work that has been done so far. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to get down in the details a little bit about the methodology that was used, as well as the risk assessment itself and some of the control results that were found. And then Cherry Bekaert also provided us with some really detailed observations and recommendations, which we as staff are still working through and looking at, and we hope to bring back before this committee at your next meeting some more information about those specific, real detailed level observations and recommendations that Cherry Bekaert has provided us with. So you can move on to the next slide, Alicia. So the purpose of the risk assessment is to assist management in conducting, the purpose of the work they did was to assist management in conducting a risk assessment for the city of Asheville and propose a roadmap to close any identified gaps. And again, that was kind of from the get-go, that's what Cherry Bekaert said they would help us do, and that's what they have done for us over the last few months. So we can go on to the next slide. So this next slide is really, like I said, the folks at Cherry Bekaert, because they're going to become our external auditors now, they really wanted to make sure that that everyone understood, from the audit committee to staff to city council, that there is no conflict of interest here. And so the results of the work that they have done are being handed off to us. And I won't read through all of the verbiage on this slide, but I think that's essentially what it's saying, is that from here on out, the results of this work are the cities and the cities to decide what we do with it from here on out. So, and I've asked Christine from Cherry Bekaert, if I missed something or a key detail on any of these slides, certainly please weigh in and let me know. So we can go to the next slide, Alicia. So the scope of the risk assessment, so it was tailored to our needs. We did identify some specific areas prior to the start of the work that we wanted Cherry Bekaert to look at. And that was specifically around our grant compliance and monitoring, inventory, particularly in those operations in our organization that have a substantial inventory. And we're really talking about fleet, our fleet maintenance unit, our water department, which has a significant inventory of pipes and materials and stuff like that they keep on hand, and also our Harris Cherokee Center operation as well. We asked them to also look specifically at our parking services, our continuity of processes there, our cash handling, technology issues that have been going on in that area. And we also had them look specifically at procurement and how departments go about procurement, with a particular emphasis on the Nature Center and Harris Cherokee Center as well. And again, not that there were specific concerns in any of those areas, but we just identified those areas as some areas that have some high volume transactions, and that we wanted to have Cherry Bekaert take a specific look at those areas. And then, like I said, beyond that, they looked at our overall control and compliance of environment as well, and identified any potential control gaps that we might have. So you can go on to the next slide, Alicia. So, and again, this is what I would say the key slide from the presentation today. This is our executive summary, or what we're calling our overarching observations. For any of you that have seen presentations that we do here at the city in the last couple of years since Ms. Campbell arrived, and I see her smiling, this is the slide that we would normally call our key takeaways. And so I'll just kind of run through these quickly. There's really even though there's 5 bullets on this page, I would say there's really kind of 4 key takeaways. And these are, again, kind of the overarching things that Cherry Bekaert identified as they went through their process over the last 6 to 9 months. And I'll talk a little bit more about the process on the next few slides, but there were extensive meetings that Cherry Bekaert had with all of our departments. And so the things that came out of that they heard from these meetings and their look at some of our policies and procedures were communication. I think that was the first theme that they heard as an area that perhaps we can make some improvement in. They did note that we do a really good job of disseminating information out in a lot of cases, but sometimes there was a lack of formalized structure, follow through, and closing the loop with some of the feedback provided. Again, that was really kind of an observation, not only in terms of external communication, but internal communication as well. Second one, and again, this is one that we wanted Cherry Becker to look closely at, and that was our grants and contract management here at the city. And I think what we heard back from them is what we knew is that we have a really decentralized process for how we handle particularly grants, but also contract management as well. And sometimes that creates some challenges with tracking, documenting, reporting, and monitoring some of those grants and contracts. And so I think one of the things we're looking at and had already been looking at as a part of the budget process for this year is, are there opportunities to perhaps improve in this area, and particularly centralize some of the work that we're doing, both with grants and contract management as well. A third area that they identified, and I don't think this certainly didn't come as a surprise to any of us working in the organization, or likely would be a surprise for city council as well, is that we have some aging infrastructure and equipment, and that's both infrastructure in the city, roads, sidewalks, those kinds of things, as well as our buildings, the equipment that we have, and things like that. And so we've been talking about that as well with city council as we've gone through the budget process this year, and are hoping to perhaps identify some additional funds for our capital improvement program through a potential 2024 GO bond. But again, not an observation that came as a surprise to any of us in the organization. The fourth thing that they identified was some concerns around security and safety. We have a very decentralized approach, and there were some concerns at certain facilities and events that a greater emphasis on safety and security should be in place. Some things around cameras, enhancing security measures, and even staffing and how we handle staffing at certain events, I think were things that rose to a level that was noted in the assessment that Cherry Becker did. And we've already started talking internally about how we can do additional training and utilize our risk management staff to help with that. And that is also a discussion we're having as a part of the budget process. And then finally, the last bullet, which I think is kind of a good news thing, and something that Christine and her team noticed as she worked with us, was that there was a level of awareness in the organization about where we're at, what our challenges are, and what we do well. And staff was very open and receptive about sharing information, receiving feedback, and was very helpful throughout the process as well. So we appreciate that being noted as an observation as well. So I'll kind of stop there. I've been doing a lot of talking to see if anybody has any questions or feedback, or Christine, I don't know if there's anything you might want to add to any of this at this point.
I just wanted to share and iterate that last point that, first of all, thank you for the opportunity and happy to be here. And but a special thanks to Tony and Becky. We had over 21 workshops, and they facilitated it. They helped us along the way with documents, discussions, and I think it was a pleasant surprise. We are not a gotcha auditor firm, and we were really here to add value. And everyone was open, honest, receptive, and had really strong conversations around challenges faced, but also great things that they feel they have done well with, even considering the constraints. So it was a pleasure working with the team and learning more about it. And they also had an openness to sharing risks that they feel, and they're the ones who do the work on a day-to-day basis and see these. So that was extremely helpful, and it made the process more wholesome. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, y'all, or should we roll on through a few more slides?
I'm not sure if this can be covered later on, but where are we in the process of rebuilding the internal audit staff, or you had talked previously about outsourcing that?
Yeah, so great question. So we're wanting to get through the risk assessment with Cherry Becker before we made any decisions about moving the program forward. I've been working with our HR staff over the past few weeks to look at what a revamped or retitled internal auditor position might look like. I think, as you all know, as we shared with you all a couple of times already, we had a lot of difficulty recruiting for the internal auditor position. And so we're going to give it one more shot, I guess I would say, in terms of putting that position back out for recruitment here in the next few months, with the idea is that we could get that position filled. And then potentially, and again, we're going through our budget process right now, but we're hoping that we can add some dollars to the internal audit budget next year to do some more contracted work. And so we want to take the results of the risk assessment that Cherry Becker has done with us. And again, they've given us some more detailed observations that we're still working through and looking at. We want to take some time and digest those, and then kind of let that inform what our next steps are in terms of the actual audits that we may look at doing next year. And so still haven't gotten the position filled, but trying to move forward with that again at this point.
Tony, in the absence of an internal audit function, which I would anticipate would kind of be the role that would kind of head up the plan for addressing these issues, who will be that person or department?
So until we get an internal auditor hired, that will continue to be me that handles that as the finance director.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I guess my only questions are kind of in terms of budget and what we would spend with an external firm versus an internal hire. You know, obviously, like I said in the past, I feel like we outsource a lot of things. You know, it's kind of noted in one of the points here on the summary. So you just got to make sure whatever we do, we're going to receive good value and it's going to meet our needs is my only concern and input.
Thanks, Andrew. All right. I think we can go on to the next slide. I think this is maybe just a quick one, but this is kind of just an overview of the methodology. And again, over the next few slides, I want to kind of dive into the methodology that Cherry Becker used as they went through this process. And it's really kind of a four-prong approach here, if you will. It's understand, assess, benchmark, and roadmap. And we're kind of at that roadmap stage now. Like I said, we originally contracted with Cherry Becker back in August. And so they went through a number of meetings with our organization and with our departments to kind of understand where we were at. They took all that information, went back, formulated their recommendations and observations, benchmarked that with some other organizations, and are now ready to provide us with that roadmap to help us kind of move forward with the program. So you can go on to the next slide, Alicia. So just quickly, and I'm not sure how much familiarity you all have with the risk assessment, but essentially there's certain factors that are looked at during a risk assessment. What are the key factors? What are the riskiest elements of what an organization does? And this is the list of the factors that Cherry Becker looked at for us as a part of this assessment. And I won't maybe not go through, well, maybe we'll go through them very quickly. But so the financial impact, obviously, I think as you all know, anything that has a large financial impact, a large dollar impact, is something that's risky and something that you want to look at. Any operation that has business transaction-like activities, such as a civic center or a nature center, those are obviously operations that are inherently going to be risky. Things that operate under a strict regulatory environment, we want to make sure that we're meeting all of our expectations there. Third party reliance is looked at as a risk factor, and that's simply because, obviously, as you all know, if you're relying on someone outside of your organization to provide a service through a contract or something, then there is inherently risk in that and things that you can't control as an organization. They looked at the control maturity, or do we have good controls in place right now to help mitigate risk, especially in areas like IT and things like that. Have there been substantial turnover in the organization or changes in our processes or systems? Because it's in environments like that that risk can go up and things can happen. They looked at our fraud risk. They evaluated how our internal controls are set up, and are they set up in such a way to mitigate or lower the risk of fraud within the organization. And then finally, they considered reputational risk. And, you know, as a public facing organization, as a local government, obviously we're doing a lot every day that puts us out in the public eye. And so there are things that can go wrong in certain areas in the police department or in picking up trash or things like that can involve reputational risk. And so they looked at all of these factors as they put together the what I'll call the report card that they have provided for us today. You can go on the next slide, Alicia. So after looking at all the risk factors, essentially every department or operation within the city that Cherry Bekaert looked at was ranked between based on its inherent risk, and it was ranked from low or negligible risk all the way up to critical risk or high. And again, this really wasn't, and maybe I inadvertently used the term report card. This really isn't a report on how well we're doing per se. It's really more of a report on just the inherent riskiness of these operations. So, for example, you're going to see on the next few slides and in some of the graphs that an operation like Harris Center is ranked as a very risky organization. That is not a report or a grading on how well Chris Corll, our Director of Community, Regional, and Entertainment Facilities, God, I don't know why I struggle on that E, how well he's doing. It's simply a reflection of the type of operation that he runs there. And it is, there's a lot of cash handling, a lot of cash in and out. And so the rankings you'll see don't necessarily reflect performance so much as just the inherent risk in some of the operations that we have. So you can go to the next slide, Alicia. So like I mentioned, I think Christine mentioned as well. So Cherry Bekaert did a lot of work over the last 6 months of 2022, working with our departments. They conducted 21 workshops that covered 31 different units and subunits within our organization. And like I said, they provided us some detailed recommendations, which we're still working through as an organization. And hopefully we'll be able to share more out with this committee at your next meeting. But there are 36 recommendations that they provided us. And again, they identified across some of our major areas, what are some of the areas that have some of the highest inherent risk in what they do. And I think the next slide kind of drills down, the next couple of slides kind of drill down to that even more. I think you can go on to slide 12, Alicia. So on this slide, again, this is the areas, or these are the areas that they identified because of the nature of what we do that really have the highest risk, and these are the areas that we probably would want to focus on if we do look to do a more of a detailed deep dive or follow up with any kind of specific internal audit work. And again, I won't read through all of these, but I would say that just in looking at these, I think you all there probably are no surprises on this slide as well. I mean, obviously, things like I've mentioned, like Harrah's, that have a lot of high dollar impact, a lot of business transactions going on. A department like my own, finance, that Becky and I manage with treasury services, GL, and purchasing, obviously an area of potential high risk, and also information technology as well. You can go to the next slide, Alicia. And this is kind of more of a graphical representation with some numbers here that kind of show you, again, based on their scoring criteria at Cherry Bekaert, what are those areas of highest risk from highest to lowest. And you can see, again, as you might guess, Harris Center scored the highest at a 12. Our fleet management division was a 10.5. And then some of the areas that are less risky, areas such as sustainability, for example, and you'll see capital projects is high on risk as well. And again, that's because folks in that area manage some really large, high dollar projects that have a lot of community impact and things like that. So And I think the next slide, Alicia, is, that's that. Actually, I'm sorry, that is the end. We do have an appendix, which takes, and I won't go through all of those slides, but again, takes the information in that last slide that I shared with you all and kind of breaks it down on a more minute level and kind of looks at each of the specific criteria for each of the areas and gives each of the areas or each of the domains a rank between low, moderate, and high in terms of the risks. So with that, I think I will stop there. And again, I'll ask Christine if you have any additional things that you think I may have missed that you would want to emphasize, and then turn it over to questions.
Just to add, so when we take this process in working with management, the risk factors are something we start with, and then management reviews those and we tailor those to the organization. Obviously, fraud risk and reputational risk weave throughout all of these areas, but purposely pull them out. And that's how we are able to consistently rank across those factors. And to Tony's point, for the inherent risk and residual risk, but we do take into consideration as part of that process in our discussions of the controls relevant to those risk areas that we discuss and that protect the organization. So that's part of the comprehensive discussion and ranking. Thank you.
Quick question. So just, I got to get it set in my mind. So these rankings that you have on this heat map, are these inherent risk or are they residual risk?
So we take those, the rankings are considering the control factors you have with the inherent and residual risk that might, the residual risk that may be retained based on those controls that are in place. And our recommendations are based on if you implement some of those recommendations, those risks further, so it's looking at the control framework you have at a very high level based on the descriptions and discussions we've had with the information provided. We did not go, and that's not part of the scope of going in to test all these controls and their effectiveness. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Tony, how long has the internal audit position been vacant, and where do we see us going, as Andrew was saying earlier, looking at an external option in lieu of a staff member?
Yeah, great question. So I think, and I'm going from memory here, I think our previous internal auditor, Patricia, left in, I think it was October of 2021. So it's been vacant for a little over, well, almost a year and a half, I would say. As you all know, we've done, I think, 3 recruitments. And Scott, I think you were in on 2 or 3 interviews, 3. Yeah, and we unfortunately did not find a candidate that we felt like had the experience and background to move forward. And so we kind of took a pause at that point, and especially with the risk assessment kicking off, we wanted to get through this particular project and have something of an internal audit work plan in mind before we made a decision about either contracting out for this function or trying to hire internally. Like I said earlier, I think where we're at right now is we want to attempt once more to find a person to work internally here at the city as an internal auditor, an internal audit program manager. We're still working through perhaps the exact title of that position, but actually have like the work, the internal audits that get done, have those be contracted out in most cases. But we're still working through that. Like I said, we're hoping to get the job announcement back out on the street here in the next month or so. As if you all were on at the beginning, we heard Becky talking about her baby. Becky and I are both getting ready to go out on leave, unfortunately, for a couple months. And so once we are back, HR is hopefully going to have us candidates to look at, and we would move forward from there. So, Scott, does that answer your question?
And if we do go with an internal option, that will still reside under the city manager's area, correct?
I think that is our plan. We haven't fully worked that out yet, but I think in order to maintain the independence of the internal audit function, that is most likely where that position would reside.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from committee members or staff?
I remember, kind of one of the challenges was in the budget for the position of the internal auditor. I want to say I saw it posted for about $60K last time I looked. It seems like if we're going to be farming out work to external firms, we're going to go over that amount pretty swiftly. So, kind of what is the total budget we're looking at around the internal audit role function for the city?
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I don't know. We also in that division, because it's a division set up through the city. We also budget our external audit as well, so that $150,000 cost is budgeted there as well. So I think the full budget for that division is somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. Becky looks like she might be checking, but it includes the salary and benefits for the position. It includes the external audit contract that we mentioned earlier. It also includes the ethics hotline, which we have an ethics hotline that folks can send in complaints either through phone calls or through their website, and so that's budgeted there as well. And then obviously just some training and travel and miscellaneous things like that. But what we would do is we would, as we go into the budget and finish up the budget for this year, we would budget for the position if our plan is to fill the position, and we would also add some additional dollars to do contracted audit beyond the external audit that we're going to be budgeting as well.
Just looking at the external audit and kind of the numbers they have for the base fee and their expected number of hours, we're looking around $140 an hour for the work that's going to be performed. I don't see that fitting in that little slice of budget, which may be something more for Sage and her colleagues, but it seems like we're not going to be able to cram it all into the budgetary space we have.
I mean, I'll say to that, I don't normally hear those small little budget items until they're baked and get to us, but is that something that needs to be addressed? Tony, are you?
Yeah, it's, when Taylor did his presentation on Tuesday, we talked about some of those other enhancements that we're evaluating as capacity allows. And this is one of the ones that's definitely on that list. And so, I think our intent is to find a way to fund some of the contracted audit, contracted internal audit work as a part of the budget that we'll be bringing all in May.
Well, Tony, it's very easy just to sit back and throw stones at glass houses, but we've been 2 years without an effective internal audit, and as it stands right now, it looks like we're not necessarily depending upon our external auditor to do internal audit work theoretically, because no one is, doing that work. And we're, and of course that's not its function. I would hope, as Andrew stated, that, City Council will at least look at this and provide monies for this, because it's an integral part of just the checks and balances with throughout the city.
also think if you're going to be looking at some kind of public funding for capital improvements, it's going to be important that we get a clean opinion in relation to our controls. And I think internal audit is critical in helping the city to ensure that, like you're saying, the checks and balances are in place and we can get a clean opinion every year. I think that's going to be critical if we want public funding.
See, Ms. Campbell has raised her hand.
I wanted to just chime in on this conversation because I don't want anyone to think that we don't value and understand the critical nature of this particular position. A lot of the reason for why we have not been able to attract a candidate, and I don't know if it has been the salary or not. We're not certain. But I know that, as Ms. McDowell said earlier, we have had 3 iterations of trying to recruit qualified people for this position, and we will continue. But certainly, I just want to express that we definitely understand the critical nature of this position, and I don't want anyone to think that we're overlooking. And that this isn't a sense of urgency for us. It is.
Okay. Any other questions or I think the next item on the agenda is public comment, but I'll turn it back over to Scott. You're muted, Scott.
Thank you, Tony. Public comment. We have no public comments. Any audio recordings have been transcribed and have been provided to committee along with pre-submitted written comments. So we didn't have any public comments. So the next thing on our agenda is, if we don't have any new business, adjournment. And I will now adjourn the meeting unless we have any other objections. So I think we have to do a vote on that. So I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it, and then I'll just share for discussion purposes that I'll be sure to follow up in our budget sessions about this concern.
Thank you, Sage.
Mm-hmm. And if we're all in favor, then I say have a great rest of your day, everyone. Try and get out there and enjoy some of that sunshine that's going to be around a little later this week.
Absolutely.
We'll stare at computers counting numbers too long. We probably all do it a little too much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.